This week we have the last quarter moon, we have Pluto going retrograde and some rather nice love and abundance vibes. We'll be talking about that. And also this week, exceptionally, I have the wonderful Cassandra Tyndall on the show from CassandraTyndall.com. And we're talking about something she knows almost nothing about through an astrological perspective, which she knows a lot about. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Not sure what people are going to make of this, but I thought I'm going to give it a go. We didn't actually 100% agree, but it was very, very interesting to have the conversation. Hello, Cass.
Hello.
Are you ready? Because this week we're going to do something that's a bit different on the Mainly Moonology podcast. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to have you back. Everybody loves you, so that's all good.
Oh, thanks.
So we will talk about the astrology of the week ahead in a minute, but I also want to flag what we're going to do after that, which is something I've been wanting to do for ages. And I know many of you who listen to this are probably going to disapprove really heartily and think that my mind is in the gutter and all that sort of stuff, and that I should be thinking of loftier things like spiritual enlightenment and so on. And I can promise you I do. I just spent half an hour doing an amazing chanting ceremony for a week-long chanting commitment thing I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. So, I feel like you can be a multifaceted person. And I'm just going to say up front, I am fascinated by celebrity and Hollywood, and I always have been ever since I can remember. And so I really wanted to take a look at the charts of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. And I know some of you are going to roll your eyes and think, Yasmin, what has become of you? But that's okay. It'll be the second half of the show. So if you don't want to listen, you can just tune out. So I happened to be talking to Cassandra Tyndall, this morning about something else. And I suddenly thought, oh, maybe Cass would like to come and do this with me and talk about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. And so I asked her, she said, yeah, sure. And I said, are you into celebrity? She's like, oh, a bit. I said, are you aware that Timothy Chalamet is dating Jenner? And she said, I barely know who they are, actually. So I said, okay, we can make that work. So, in fact, I'm going to be the slightly celebrity-obsessed astrologer, and Cass will be the one who doesn't actually know much about anything to do with these people, but will give us a purely sort of astrological viewpoint rather than my viewpoint, which is obviously going to be coloured by my thoughts about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. So before we get to there, let us talk about the astrology of the week ahead.
What's in the stars?
So, Miss Cass, I'm looking at the ephemeris for the week ahead, and what I see is we are going to be kicking off the week with a first quarter moon in the sign of Leo. Basically, for me, what that says to me, because I'm so into moonology and manifesting and so on, what that actually says to me is, we're halfway from the new moon to the full moon, so bloody well keep manifesting, because this is primo manifesting time for the month. And the first quarter moon in Leo, it could definitely be bringing up a little crisis, which is going to be testing you, maybe testing how serious you are about your new moon wishes that you made. When the sun and the moon are at angles, we traditionally expect a little bit of a crisis that's going to help move us forward. It can be a time where you decide that actually, you know what, that intention I set at the new moon, I'm never going to make it, and you just give up, or you might just double down and go harder. Thoughts from you, Miss Cass, about a first quarter moon in Leo? And obviously pride may be involved because we have Leo implicated. But what do you say, Miss Cass?
I agree with you in the sense that it's a double down energy, pedal to the metal kind of stuff. And I think having Mars in Leo at the same time and the moon kind of pinging that energy, Mars obviously not retrograde anymore. It's powering through the month of May after Mars being retrograde and moving so slowly all of 2025. Throughout May, it moves very quickly comparatively. And having the moon, an angular moon, the first quarter moon, a dynamic moon coming through and activating that Mars, I think it's an excellent time to really strike out, take some bold action, a bit of courage, make your dreams happen kind of thing. So it could also be a little bit of a reality check in the sense, there is still another week to go before we get to the full moon. Week and a bit, a week or so, week and a bit. So it's not too late, you know what I mean? And the first quarter moon, I feel it is a flex your muscles, go out there and show yourself or whomever, whatever, what you're made of. It's getting things done. I like this one.
Yeah, but also I do think don't let your pride trip you up because it's Leo.
Well,
and it's
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you don't want to, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
The age-old question. I want to be happy. What about you?
Sometimes I like to be right. No, I'm definitely a lot more mellow than I used to be.
Right. And I always like to remind people, Cass and I are actually born on the same day, not the same year, but the same day. So it's always quite funny to hear about each other's little foibles and so on. Okay. So basically, go for it. Very good point that Mars is moving forward. So, let's just get it all done but don't let your pride trip you up. Just keep going and just power through. And if you really want what you say you want, then don't stop now. Don't stop me now. Put that on, play that beautiful song by Queen.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the fact, actually on the same day, May the 4th, so Sunday, the day this podcast drops, as they call it these days in 2025, Pluto's going retrograde. So in the sign of Aquarius, what have you got to tell us about that, Miss Cass? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think this is going to, if you've got parts of your chart that are in the early degrees of the fixed signs, so obviously Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio, this will be a big deal for you. But Pluto in Aquarius, it feels as though we get to kind of pull our energy back from what Pluto has been doing. I know there's a lot of different ideas around retrogrades, but I feel it can just be a bit of a pulling back of some of the intensity and gives us a little bit of breathing space. I mean, in the scheme of things, Pluto in Aquarius is kind of new. It's been coming in and out of Aquarius for a couple of years now, and it only went in there permanently back in November. So this is a 20-year cycle. So this is the first real retrograde we have had entirely in Aquarius. So it might be just a little time to pull our energy back, take a breather, realize what areas of our life have been changing, what have felt a bit intense, and maybe sort of rethink about some of those things and how we might want to approach the Aquarius area of our lives and, sort of rethink that a little bit. Being air, you might have to innovate, change, and do things a little bit differently in that space.
Yeah, I love that. And the other thing I would say as well is, in a way, it's like a bit of a breather because it's a retrograde. So, as Pluto goes forward, it just sort of, it blows everything up, explodes things, causes volcanic eruptions and all this kind of thing. But then as it goes backwards, it can sort of re-trigger the things it's already triggered if you didn't sort of, to mix my metaphors from blowing things up to popping the pimple. If you didn't do a proper cleanup, now you might get a second chance. But it also, like you say, it sort of takes the pressure off a bit because it's no longer moving forward. So it's not like one thing after another. It's a bit of a rehashing of, did you sort all that SHIT out?
It's more of a pause, just catching your breath before you get up again. And I don't think Pluto, it's October. So we've got a fair while now where we get a little bit of let's just sort of pull the energy back a little bit and assess the landscape. And what does Pluto and Aquarius mean for me as an individual?
Yeah. And actually, Cass actually does private readings, and that would be a great thing for anyone who wants a private reading to find out, what is Pluto doing to my chart? Because as you said, it's a very, very long cycle.
Yes, 20 years.
Yeah, so Cass is at CassandraTyndall.com, and I will mention that again at the end, but just so people know that you do read.
Oh, thank you, Yasmin. Oh, yeah, and I always offer 20% off for your lovely listeners. So what's that?
Amazing.
Moon 20, I think, is the code.
Okay, all right, well, get in. All right, so look, for the rest of the week, it's sort of like what we've talked about. The quarter moon to me is quite a big thing in the great scheme of the whole monthly lunar cycle. Pluto retrograde is definitely a big thing because that's, like we say, it's a big 20-year cycle. The rest of what's happening for the rest of the week is, you could almost say it's more small fry, but it will actually colour the week. So we've got Mercury sextile Jupiter, Venus sextile Pluto, and then Mercury moving into Taurus. So thoughts on that, Cass? I mean, it's just quite nice and positive, isn't it?
Yeah, sextiles, it might just bring a little bit of ease and flow. Mercury with Jupiter, that's sort of feeling like your inspired ideas. You can have an idea and transition it into action pretty easy. Or conversations potentially that are uplifting and inspiring, or even motivating, that dynamic of air and fire. Obviously, Mercury moving through Aries is fire, and then Jupiter and Gemini is air. Sometimes when you have a good powwow with someone who can be really uplifting and motivating, like, yeah, I can do this. So just a little bit of encouragement can go a long way with the sextile energy, I think.
Yeah. And also I think there's, in terms of the whole manifesting shebang, which I'm always so into, for one thing, it does make Monday a pretty good day for a meeting, or where you're going to present some ideas, or a conversation that you need to have, or even a text message exchange. But also, I think with Mercury sextile Jupiter, another thing that I see is very much, positive thinking is going to be a lot easier. Looking on the bright side is going to be a lot easier. And that's so important when it comes to manifesting, because, it's when we're looking on the negative that we sort of, our thoughts get in our own way. Would you agree with that?
For sure. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Really, Monday, good day for anything communications. And then May 6th, which is then going to be Tuesday, we have Venus sextile Pluto. So the first half of the week, from Sunday to Tuesday at least, so first few days of the week, Venus sextile Pluto, for me, that's a beautiful thing for love. It's good for abundance. It's sort of sextile, so it's the flow. Venus is the planet of love and abundance. Pluto is the planet that transforms things from the inside out. So it can be good for relationships, can be good if your finances have been in a bit of disarray, if you're getting restarted when it comes to love or abundance, because Venus is in the first sign of the zodiac, Aries. So, I mean, I think really what we can say, because I really want to talk about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, is that, like, if we were to sum up this week, let's sum up the week. So we've got a few challenges, but go for it. There's going to be a pause on the eruptions in life. A little bit of positive thinking and good communications will go a very long way. And there could be some wonderful transformations to do with love and abundance. Do you agree with that summary?
Yeah. I think having Pluto just pulling its energy back, a couple of nice sextiles, it's like, okay, let's reassess this.
Yes.
Let's have a conversation about this. What do I value? What do I want?
Yes.
And start making things happen.
Yeah. And then in terms of what's coming up, just for anybody who wants to know, May 12th is going to be the full moon. So we'll talk about that. Well, I probably won't be able to get Cass back here again, but I will talk about that next week, one way or another. All right. Thank you, Cass. So now let's talk about Hollywood.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So for anyone who's like Cass and doesn't really know what's going on, and actually for Cass as well, what's going on is that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Blake Lively is obviously one of the top actresses in the world, very much A-list, very powerful woman in Hollywood. And she signed on to make a film called It Ends With Us. And the whole thing has gone to hell in a handbasket. She accused the writer and director of the film, Justin Baldoni, of pretty much, I think, just boils down to sexual harassment. And it looked like she and her husband, Ryan, who is as powerful as she is, or more powerful, I would say. He's one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. It looked like they were going to sort of maybe wipe Justin Baldoni's career off the face of the earth, but he has a very, very powerful and absolutely loaded billionaire investor in his company who said, oh, no, you don't, and fired back with writs or suing them. I hope I'm getting all the terminology right, and I hope nobody comes and sues me for getting it wrong. Please understand, I'm not a lawyer. But basically, they fired back and said, oh, no, you don't. And I think they're all just suing each other. And the big question, Cass, is, who's in the right and who's in the wrong? Now, I wanted today just to look at the charts of Blake and Ryan, because there's just one point that I would really like you to consider, which is that Blake and this is just really, I wanted to run some theories past Cass. So Blake is a triple, or is she a quadruple Virgo, right?
She's got 5 planets in Virgo.
A quintuple, yes. Okay, let's have a look. So she's got, all right, so I've got Venus, Mercury and Moon. Is that right? All in Virgo.
Mars, Sun, so Venus, quintuple. Mercury and the Moon.
Yeah, so she's a quintuple Virgo. Now, okay, so this was my theory that I would love to run past you, Cass, and feel free to disagree, okay, because I know some people would disagree. But this whole thing in Hollywood, this whole story has been painted as though she's this rather evil, manipulative, nasty woman who really wants to bring down Justin Baldoni. Now, I'm just going to say I'm very much team Justin Baldoni. I believe that he is the wronged party in this affair. And most people, if they know anything about this whole thing, will have taken one side or the other. So I'm just going to say what I'm saying is not because I'm pro Blake Lively and I think that she's been wronged and Justin Baldoni is guilty. What my personal opinion, and I think we're all allowed to have a personal opinion even if we are astrologers, is that Justin's in the right. But I guess the question is for me, and that's why I wanted you to look at the charts, Cass, is Blake in the wrong, or has this whole thing been some Machiavellian plot carried out by her possibly dastardly husband, Ryan Reynolds, who is said to be an absolute control freak, who is said, some people think that what happened was that Blake actually fell for Justin Baldoni and just sort of the whole thing got right up Ryan Reynolds' nose, and so they sort of came up with a whole lot of things, including a sham lawsuit, which has all been in the news. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, it's fine. But basically, a lot of people are saying that he's the Machiavellian power behind the whole thing, and even though she's the one who's copying all the flack, he's the one who's manipulated it all, not least because he was jealous of Justin Baldoni. And there are also other people who claim that this whole thing has happened because they wanted to wrest the control of the next film out of the hands of Justin Baldoni. And in the contract, there was a clause that if he was accused of sexual misconduct, he would lose the rights to the sequel. And so, of course, now he's been accused of misconduct and, you know, he's fighting back. So my theory, and I'm sorry for taking so long and having you on, Cass, and just blathering on like this, but
no, it's okay. It's good to have a little bit of backstory.
Thank you. So my initial thing, when I went and I had a look at her chart, listening to people saying, you know, she was this awful, nasty, conniving person, and there are videos of her being quite offhand with people and a little bit sarcastic and, you know, and so on and so forth. But, you know, has she been misled by her Svengali figure, her husband? My initial thought when I looked at her chart was, what? She's got 5 planets in Virgo. I just can't see someone who's got that many planets in the sign of Virgo, which Virgo to me, more than anything, Virgo wants to help, you know. And again, just another little bit of side info for you, Cass. You know, she's been accused of wanting to get in there and just take over in a kind of a really nasty way of she wanted to, instead of being an actress, she wanted to be the director, the sort of behind-the-scenes director and rewriting scenes. And her husband rewrote a whole lot of scenes and wanted to have him put on the wardrobe. And everyone's saying, you know, you're an actress. You're not meant to do that. You're meant to just turn up and do what you're meant to do. But again, I feel like, you know, it's quite possible to want to come in and be so much wanting to help that you end up sort of meddling. And I'm actually reminded of an Australian former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, who I believe was Virgo, if I remember correctly, who was, you know, very much accused of doing the wrong thing. But in my head, I thought, well, maybe he just wanted to help and he didn't realise. So do you agree with the premise, Cass, that 5 times a quintuple Virgo, do you see them? I just don't see them as possibly being, maybe it's a bias, but I just don't feel like they can be that evil. What do you reckon?
I don't know.
Down if you must. It's okay.
Okay, this is my take. So, yeah, we're honing in on the Virgo stuff, which is fair because there's so much of it. So she has all of her personal planets in Virgo. So obviously planets like Jupiter and Saturn, they take longer to go around the sky. So you'll capture, a year of people in the same sign, 2.5 years of people in the same sign as Saturn. But having Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon all in one sign is actually pretty rare. So anyone sort of born around that August 1987 is going to have a similar signature. Maybe not the moon, but anyway, give, take, one half dozen of the other.
Yeah.
So all of this energy of Virgo in her horoscope is located in her second house. So the second house is, money. It's her sense of self-worth, value, confidence, her skills, gifts, and talents. So to have these planets in the second house, she has Leo rising. So Leo, the sun, is the ruling planet of Leo, and it's positioned in the second house. So a big part of her identity, not just because it's Leo, but it's the sun, the ruling planet of her ascendant, is in her second house. So she really identifies with this second house energy. So abundance, support, money. Now, there's an interesting sort of philosophical component here is when a planet, well, she's got 5. So when planets are in the second house, they are, the phrase, it's darkest before dawn.
Yeah.
Because those planets are not yet risen over the horizon. So these planets, if we're going to use that, it's dark before dawn, all of these planets are in that darkness before dawn. That's a tough energy when all your stuff is there. We could talk about this for a couple of hours, but, people have lives, so they don't want to hear it all. There's some planets here that are really helpful, and there's some planets here that are very unhelpful. So I'll just break it down. The most unhelpful planet in her chart, hands down without question, is Venus in Virgo. In Blake's chart, Venus rules her career, her public image, and her reputation. So that's Venus in Virgo, and it's combust the sun. All of these planets are exceptionally close to the sun, maybe with a technical exception of Mars, so combust. And so when planets are combust, you can't see them. They're hidden from view. So there's a lot of just this, and not saying she is dark or there's sinister, there's stuff, but just looking at this symbolically, there's a lot of unseen, there's a lot of hidden, there's a lot of darkness. Whether she is the carrier of that or whether she attracts that or whether because there's just so many blind planets in the birth chart here. So to give you an image, so when the sun rises, you see a lot of light before you actually see the sun. And so all her planets, all these personal planets are caught in that corona of light. So they're rendered invisible. In addition to that, the moon is so new, it's still invisible. So there's just, again, a lot of energy of darkness. And in traditional astrology, the second house is classed as one of the dark houses. Reason being, the second house doesn't see the first house. A part of the chart that doesn't see the ascendant can't support you. This is just a take. Now, so we've got the ruling planet of career in a very, very poor condition. However, she does have a planet that is also responsible for her money and her wealth and her abundance. The same planet that rules that, which is Mercury, also rules her 11th house. 11th house is friendships, communities, groups, industry. We could call that Hollywood. And we could also call that her audiences. So if she, her Instagram, people who watch her movies, people, if she sells products. Okay, so that would go there too. So there is a relationship here between money and Hollywood, audiences, friendships, all of that stuff. It's a bit messy. It's a bit dark. Now, Mercury in Virgo is at 6 degrees. So with a lot of technical tools, that's probably one of her most elevated or helpful planets. However, sometimes what I see with planets who are on paper look really good, there can also be a sense of entitlement there. And if you think about something in your own life that you're actually really good at, you sort of don't give it too much thought. You might take it for granted, or you just might expect that to go well. And then when it doesn't, it's kind of a bit of a what the moment. So, whether it's entitlement, whether it is just not thinking her plans, plots, and what have you would go wrong, who knows? Because Mercury does have a trickster quality, and that's the planet that rules all of this Virgo stuff. So that's
okay. So now that you've mentioned plots, plotting,
it's thickening.
The plot is thickening. Okay. So let's look at his chart, Ryan Reynolds' chart.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
Because for me, his chart says plotting.
Why do you say that?
Because of the very dark scorpionic energy in there. But I think you're going to say that I'm not being fair to Scorpios. But we've all got Scorpio in our chart somewhere, so I'm not actually having a go at Scorpios.
Yeah, well, he's born on a total solar eclipse. So that's kind of a powerful and potent energy there. And there's also a Mars-Uranus conjunction. What to make
really
of that?
Like electrical fire.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at the
if you look at their chart, I think she looks like butter wouldn't melt, and he's the one who's doing all this. But I don't think you're going to agree with me, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's I try. I've got Jupiter on my ascendant. I try and see a balanced perspective. Yeah, I don't necessarily see Scorpio being it's very good at strategy. How long have they been married for, Yasmin?
But it can also be quite vengeful. Let's call a spade a spade. I mean, if there's vengeance in the chart, it's going to be scorpionic or plutonic. It's not Virgo. Virgo is not vengeful.
I'm also looking at the ruler of the ascendant, and that's always going to be the most important planet in anyone's chart. And so for Ryan, the planet that rules his ascendant happens to be the same planet that rules his career. Now, that planet is Mercury, and that's positioned at 20 degrees of Libra. Now, there's a bit of a special, so some of your listeners might be aware that there's some signs, planet sign combinations that, we all know that, say, for example, the sun is the ruling planet of Leo and Venus is Libra. And so there's planets that rule signs, there's planets that are really poorly performing in other signs, and then other planets that perform really well in other signs. And that's just a sort of a diagnostic tool. It's not a value judgment by any stretch. Then we have planets that occupy extra special degrees of the birth chart. So 360 degrees, and you happen to have a planet at a really exalted position. And Ryan, I was like, what's his name? Ryan
Reynolds. They've been married for 12 years, by the way.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question, but I'll come back to that. So essentially, he has got Mercury in Libra, which is the exalted position of Saturn, the exaltation degree of Saturn. So to me, that would be more inclined to see that he's really kind of balanced, he's fair, and he's going to weigh all things up. So yeah, I mean, I see that as the ruling planet of his career and his ascendant. Like that's a pretty good thing. It also happens to be with money, so in the second house of money. So I don't necessarily think he would be into dodgy deals. I don't get that vibe just from having a look here. And yeah, so my question was, how long have they been married? And so you said 12 years. I would imagine if they were going to screw over a director or a producer or whomever this other Justin guy is, would they have not done it already?
Well, apparently they have done. Apparently,
Oh, okay. All right.
apparently,
Yes.
apparently they're quite well known for sort of taking things over. And there's multiple
Mm.
interviews that have been shown with Blake saying, well, they just want me to be pretty and stand on the right spot, but I'm much more than that, and I want to get involved. I want to shape the way the whole thing goes, and blah 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 blah.
So again, there's that visibility, that darkness of all of those Virgo planets, and Virgo in of itself is not that. It's just where it's positioned in the entire horoscope. So she's really struggling with maybe not being seen in the way that she wants to be seen. And maybe this was the plot that was like, yeah, well, this is how it's going to be, and all her Virgo, all his Scorpio combined, that's a very strategic, well-planned kind of vibe, like a connection between two people and two charts. Now, from what I kind of picked up on with something you were saying in the backstory, was that they tried to use like there was a clause in the contract, basically he wouldn't get the rights to the sequel if there was some sexual issues with him.
Yes, I mean this is just
and then they've gone for that. You know what I mean?
The theory that people have come up with, that the reason why they've gone for that is because it would do him out of the sequel, and also there's quite a big theory that all this happened because because Ryan Reynolds was at least so extremely powerful in Hollywood. And they thought that they could, and Justin Baldoni, basically no one had ever heard of him when all this started, or barely anyone had heard of him when all this started. And they sort of thought they could just wipe him out and get what they wanted. Anyway. So, I mean,
Ryan does have...
Yeah.
No, you go. He's got that Venus Neptune. It's wide, but it's together in Sagittarius.
Yeah.
That can be a little bit of a hoodwinking energy, not seeing things for what they really are. Like that can be something to be, my astrologist, I'd be like, oh yeah, be a little bit aware of that. And then Blake Lively has the trine between Venus and Neptune. So, that suits really well for Hollywood. Venus, bright lights and movie stars, those old school silver screen type songs and things. But Venus, Neptune, when you want someone to come to the table with clarity and honesty, again, it's messy. It's a quality that...
I mean, I don't think we can say that having 3 planets and 1 point in Scorpio is not going to make you prone to a little bit of manipulation if you need it.
Well, you're going to really, sometimes I think of Scorpio, when they really get a bee in their bonnet, they can get Scupio, and they're not going to see things clearly. They just sort of, they'll sting their own tail to, they'll sting themselves to death before they feel threatened or vulnerable in any way. So, yeah, there's certainly a controlling...
Which is exactly what he appears to be doing right now.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
He literally appears to be stinging himself to death.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is fascinating because, as I said, I had to Google, what's his face look like again? I was thinking of one of those Hemsworth guys, I think. So.
I mean, he's done some really, quite nasty things. Like, for example,
right.
he's clearly made fun of Justin Baldoni in his film Deadpool with a character called Nice Pool, who he really...
Yeah.
really made fun of Justin Baldoni, and nobody at the time really realized what it was about, but now it's really clear what he was doing. So I don't know. Look, I have Scorpio fairly prominent in my chart. So if you're Scorpio and you're listening to me talking about this, please don't think I'm, being horrible. I'm not. I just think that he's the problem.
Well, Pluto's squaring all of this stuff for him right now. So his Scorpio planets are, so the sun's at 0, the north node's at 3, and the moon's at 3. So as we speak, Pluto is stationing at 3 degrees of Aquarius, squaring that. So it's really going to, that's it's coming back to, square his sun, even at 3 degrees, it's still touching the sun. So this is really going to be if this was just a client coming, this is going to be a difficult time. And Pluto is essentially squaring the nodes, which is going to be a very sort of, choices that he's making is really going to sort of have this fated energy to it. And Uranus hasn't yet passed over Jupiter in his birth chart, which is the ruler, which that essentially is his wife. So he's got Pisces as the sign that rules marriage, ruled by Jupiter. And Jupiter in his birth chart is 29 degrees of Taurus. So Uranus is going to go over that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this ends the marriage. I'm going to say it right there.
Oh, poor things. I hope not for their sake. But I don't know. But you don't agree that looking at their charts, he's more likely to be the power behind the throne of this whole shit show?
I mean, she could be slightly hoodwinked here. I'm being such a Libra moon right now, aren't I? But yeah, look, is he the power? I see some dynamics with her too. I mean,
or maybe they're both equally guilty. Who knows?
Well, yeah, birds of a feather, right?
Yeah. So the very interesting thing is I've actually just pulled up Justin Baldoni's chart as well, which,
great.
by the way, is the 24th of January, 1984.
Okay.
24th of January, 84. No birth time, unfortunately. But guess where his sun is? You wouldn't read about it.
0 Aquarius or 3 Aquarius?
4 Aquarius,
yeah. Yeah.
So very interesting because Pluto is obviously, about to roll, has been and is about to roll over his Pluto as well.
So they're all entangled with each other in this way, right?
So entangled. Yeah. He's managed to maintain almost like a dignified position through this whole thing. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out when when Pluto goes over his sun, because Pluto can wipe you out, but it can also be very empowering. And I reckon he's going to end up.
And that conjunction's good. A conjunction can do that.
This whole thing's going. Who knows? Because Hollywood's such a weird place, ruled by Neptune, and that's so bloody obvious. I'm very sweary today. But yeah, so now we'll see what happens when Pluto goes over his sun, and if that sort of makes him one of the most powerful, most biggest power players in Hollywood in the end, or if he vanquishes them, or not. All right. Well, look, Cass, I don't think we really agreed. I'm not sure we 100% disagreed. But I think maybe you've given me a slightly new perspective on Blake because of thinking about the second house placement of all her planets using more traditional astrology. But I still stand by my thoughts that if I look at their charts, I just don't think she's capable of trying to ruin someone's life to the extent that they've been trying to ruin his life. Whereas I look at his and I think he is capable of it. That is just my...
Yeah, well, I mean, Scorpio definitely does have a ruthless vibe to it for sure. So, she's got some aspects to her own Pluto, So maybe sometimes that all of that Virgo energy can kind of give, maybe this is how they've played it, making her look like the fair maiden in the field, very Virgo archetype.
Yeah.
And then, he's really been sort of the one pressing the buttons or pulling the strings in the background.
Thank you. That's exactly how I see it. And it's not what their public image was. So his public image was very much, the funny, nice guy.
Yeah, I think that's what I kind of recall him being.
Which is why, probably because of his ascendant, like he's got the nice Libra ruled ascendant and so on and so forth, but it doesn't really, I don't think it tells the truth of his actual, chart, which is why it's always so important to look at the whole chart, not just how someone comes across or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, look, now that you've done all this, Cass, you'll probably pay a bit more attention and you'll see it all in
see it everywhere.
Unfolding it online. There will eventually be books written about this, I think, because it's been so fascinating to watch it playing out. I think we sort of, I feel like we've come to some sort of conclusion anyway. Everyone else can listen and decide what they think, and then we'll see what happens as the months unfold, because actually the actual court case isn't going to run until next year, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want a scandal in Hollywood, I mean, just make it a sex scandal, you know? Everything else is boring comparative, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's been very interesting from the point of view that, you know, for example, when the film actually came out at the premiere, they, as in Blake and Ryan, somehow managed to banish, I mean, you can hardly believe this, and you probably don't know this, they banished him to the basement of the cinema. So Justin Baldoni, was basically sent downstairs to the basement with all his friends and family while they lapped up the limelight. I mean, that's pretty weird. Yeah. I mean, there's photos. It's like there's no question about all that.
Wow, that's abuse, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a way, you know?
Yeah.
Who does that?
Yeah. Well, maybe they're both complicit in this case. Maybe.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, where is Blake in this? You know, does she just play along and go along? Or, you know, is she sort of going, hang on a minute, that's not right?
Well, that's my point with the whole Virgo thing, is that Virgo people are not really usually out to do stuff like that. So maybe she is just playing along. That's what I've been trying to say without being too horrible to anybody. You know?
But, I mean, if she was so helpful, why did she not do that? I guess I'm sort of looking at it from a different angle there.
Well, I think because he's really the power behind the throne. I mean, she famously said during this whole thing about when she was trying to get Justin Baldoni to change the script, how she thought it should be changed. She said this famous thing. I haven't actually seen Game of Thrones. Have you seen Game of Thrones?
Oh, yes, I'm a fan.
Okay. She famously sent a text message saying, you know, if you ever get around to watching Game of Thrones, you'll understand that I am Khaleesi, and I have some very powerful dragons. And that by that she meant her husband, Ryan Reynolds, and her best friend, or her former best friend at this point, so it seems, Taylor Swift, who's pretty much one of the most powerful people in entertainment in America. So she was married to one of the most powerful men in Hollywood and best friends with one of the arguably the most powerful performer in America. And so she was kind of saying, don't mess with me because I've got my dragons, right? So, you know, she's always definitely played the fair maiden. She's romping through the fields with the lovely long hair, and she's absolutely beautiful. But again, I feel like she's caught up in this. I don't think this would have been her choice. I think she's been misled by her Machiavellian Svengali husband. And no one is really going to convince me otherwise. But it's very interesting to hear that you think, yeah, but she might be just as responsible as him.
All of these planets, these Virgo planets, make your technical talk here, what's called superior square to the ruler of, you know, her husband, essentially. So I don't know. I think she's pulling a few more shots under the guise of being the fair maiden. I don't think she's an innocent bystander. She may not be. I mean, as she said, she's got dragons. I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess the question is why, if Ryan Reynolds is already the most, you know, the big Hollywood guy, Taylor Swift is, you know, she's besties with that, you know, why don't they just be content with that?
I think the implication is that they've done this sort of thing before and they've got their way, because normally, you know, people just roll over. But in this case, because Justin Baldoni had this billionaire guy behind him who said, lying down, we're fighting back, it's all played out in a way I think nobody ever saw coming. All right, well, look, Cass.
Fascinating. I think I'm going to have to do a deep dive now.
Yes, you're definitely going to have to do a deep dive. And if there are any major new developments, we can always get back on here and talk a little bit more. Yeah, so there you go, guys. There's a double analysis. You know, I don't think we strongly disagree, but we maybe see things slightly differently. Maybe it gives you a little insight into how astrology works. Who knows? It's a little bit, I'm not sure if it's very fulfilling to have heard what we've said, but hopefully it was at least a bit interesting. And you can draw your own conclusions.
Well, you know where I'm going to be tonight, scrolling my Instagram feed.
Exactly.
getting the
Well,
updates.
there's certainly no shortage of material to help you find out everything you need to know.
I mean, one of my dearest friends is a publicist in Hollywood, and she was talking about it, and I don't even know who she is. And I Googled her, and I was like, yeah, she looks familiar, but I can't tell you what she's done.
Yeah.
So I really didn't know she was that level of fame. So
Oh
I'll
no,
have to look
she's
into her a
huge.
bit.
She's huge.
Okay.
If you want to find out how she got her break, it was a show called Gossip Girl, and
Oh,
she was the lead in that. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, Miss Cass, I'm going to say thank you so much for coming on
well,
here
thank you.
and talking about these people and giving your very interesting perspective. Before we go, Cass Tyndall, tell people where they can find you.
Well, my website, CassandraTyndall.com, and I'm on the social medias. So, yeah, jump over to my website. You can subscribe to my newsletter there. There's horoscopes. You can read those. I write a lot of those. And yeah, and if you're keen to explore some of these astrological energies in your own life, yeah, the code Moon20 gives all of Yasmin's readers a little bit of a discount on a reading. So, book in.
That is so brilliant. Thank you so much, Cass. And yeah, we'll be back next week with maybe a bit more Hollywood. Well, I'll be back next week with maybe a bit more Hollywood. And we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
Oh, well, let us know what you think about a little bit of Hollywood gossip every now and then.
Yes, exactly. Let us know. All right. Thanks, Cass. Thanks, everyone. All right.
Anytime, anytime.
Lots of love.